I would point to the end of last year. Now, unfortunately, we had to go through 3 quarterbacks last year, but I mean, we had Mr. Irrelevant, who did one heck of a job, but played for us in San Francisco and took us all the way to the NFC Championship game. So I think how you structure the entire thing, offense, that includes defense, that includes special teams, everything plays a hand in how it all goes together.
They tell me that's Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. That's a human being I've never seen before. I mean, isn't it just further illustration of how – I'm serious. He could walk up to me on the street and kick me in the face, and I would not know that's Bobby Slowick. But it just shows you the churn every year. Every year, new faces and names are injected into our broader NFL consciousness, and it may take a while for Bobby Slowick to get there because he's the offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans. Anyway.
It says here on the card.
Yeah.
Please.
I don't know. I'll take your word for it, control room. So
I mean, I believe that's Bobby. I've never seen Bobby Slowick either, so I don't know. But yeah, that was funny the way you just put that.
It could be anyone. I don't know. At a certain point, you make the leap of faith. So, bottom line, yeah, you can find quarterbacks. It's not quite like running back where you can like throw a rock and hit a running back, but quarterbacks are out there. The reality, though, is the whole last guy in the draft becomes surprise wonderkind of the NFL. That doesn't happen very often. There's a reason the legend of Tom Brady is fueled by the fact that he was the 199th overall pick. You don't find franchise quarterbacks in round 6 or 7 of the draft. So, yeah, you have to aim a little bit higher if you want to have a higher degree of certainty that you're going to have a guy who can play at a high level. And look, the Texans, they've got a blank slate. There's a good thing in having that freedom to go pick your quarterback. And I feel like they just need to use that 2nd overall pick or move up to the 1st overall pick. They wouldn't have had to if they, not beaten the Colts in Week 18. But either way, get a young guy, try to develop yourself another Deshaun Watson who wants to actually stay with your team after he gets his 2nd contract. I still don't know whatever went wrong between those two. And this was all before the stuff went off the rails as it relates to the lawsuits. The relationship between Deshaun Watson and the Texans became irreversibly poisoned just 4 months after he signed his 2nd contract. So find a young guy, hope he's a franchise quarterback, and please, 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 Texans, work a little harder to have the right relationship with him.
Well, yeah, and I think that starts with the front office and Caserio, and now they've hired D'Amico Ryans, and it seems like they are on at least an upward trajectory when it comes to that kind of stuff. So, I mean, like having the 2nd overall pick is not Lovie Smith's problem, obviously, because he is no longer there. So that was a nice little parting gift from him. I love that he did that. I mean, the Texans have the ammo to move up to number 1. And if I'm the Texans, I'm doing that. I mean, I give the Bears, I might overwhelm the Bears just to say, like, let me do this, because if we don't have our franchise quarterback, then where are we going to be in the first place? So if they believe in Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or whoever, they need to go up and do it so that they make sure they get that guy.
But, the counter to that is if you trade up to get that guy, you put more pressure on him. You put more pressure on yourself because you have the number 1 overall pick. There's something to be said for letting someone else pick first. Now, take that up with the Chargers in 1998. But there is something to be said if you have 2 guys you really like the 49ers move up to the 3rd pick 2 years ago because they had 3 at the end of the day that they really liked. We don't mind that someone else is picking 1 and 2. We're content with number 3. So there may be an assessment made that they're going to keep their trade assets. They're just going to accept whoever's there at 2, and they'll make it work. But regardless, it's something the Texans need to do. Now, they may not do it, or maybe they would do it as a guy who sits on the bench for a year or 2 if they pursue Jimmy Garoppolo. Here is the guy that they tell me is Bobby Slowick on soon-to-be free agent Jimmy Garoppolo.
We have a process in everything we go through, and that's roster construction as far as free agency, as far as guys we already have here, as far as the draft, just everything together. We have a process we go through. Jimmy obviously is part of that process. He's going to be a free agent. And we grind through that as a coaching staff. We grind through that in the personnel department. We have conversations. I have conversations with Nick. He has conversations with D'Amico. And then Nick and D'Amico kind of, put their heads together and lay out a plan of what we want to do going forward, and we'll see where that takes us.
I've just gotten a text from the Texans that is not Bobby Slowick. That is not anyone employed by the Houston Texans. That person does not speak for the Texans, because if you were paying attention there, he committed a pretty blatant tampering violation.
I was just going to say.
Thou shalt not, even though the 49ers don't care, they're not trying to keep him, right? They're not trying to keep him. They know he's leaving. But the way the tampering policy is written, that is a textbook violation. Now, look, it didn't stop Bruce Arians from spouting off at the Combine 3 years ago. Yeah, I'm going to call Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers when free agency opens. But it is a tampering violation. And the thing about tampering violations, they happen all the time. You never know when the NFL is going to decide to whack someone for it. But you're far more likely to get whacked than not if you're doing it blatantly. And if I'm the Dolphins, who lost a first-round pick last year for tampering with Tom Brady and Sean Payton, I'm probably calling the league office and saying, hey, because, we see it all the time. A team gets hit for something that everyone does. So when anyone does it after that, they're like, hey, they did it too. Are they going to get punished? So anyway, yes, that was a tampering violation, Myles.
Yeah. It seemed like one. I mean, whenever you're talking about a guy who's a pending free agent and not actually a free agent, that is technically tampering. And what you're supposed to say is, I'm not supposed to talk about guys on other teams' rosters. And I guess that Bobby Slowick, who probably has not done many press conferences because we didn't know who he was, and if the card hadn't shown what his name was, we wouldn't know him. Then I guess he's not really gotten that press conference memo yet. But I mean, it's a pretty soft tampering violation, but it is still tampering.
Now, regardless, what do they do about Jimmy G? You've got the connection with Nick Caserio to Jimmy Garoppolo. Caserio was the guy who drafted him, although Bill Belichick runs the show in New England. But still, Caserio was there. And sometimes familiarity is a bad thing, because there continue to be periodically little trickles and tidbits and nuggets of, they traded Jimmy Garoppolo for a reason. And there's that whole thing that pops up from time to time about how players on the team were upset in 2016 when Tom Brady was suspended. Garoppolo didn't play when he could have played. Those are all things that factor into the overall experience when you're making that decision. The bottom line is the guy can't stay healthy. At running back, I say it's not the player's fault. It's the position. At quarterback, it's the player's fault. The rules are set up to keep you healthy. If you're consistently injured at the quarterback position, at a certain point, it is your fault.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, injuries just gotta happen at a certain point. All these things.
Not when you drop your shoulder, September 23, 2018 in Kansas City, you're running out of bounds, and you got to be tough guy meathead, and you drop your shoulder into a defensive back and tear your ACL in the process. That's on you.
Okay, but I mean, all the rest of these things, we're really going to say that his foot injury was his fault that happened at the beginning of that game against the Dolphins on December 4th, 2022? I don't think that's very fair, Mike. I don't know about all that. I mean, you could
that's
say
never
one
stopped
thing,
me in the past.
I know, but you could say he's injury prone, which, I mean, looking at the list, unfortunately, he just is an injury prone player. But I don't know if being injury prone is actually your fault or not. I think it just might be one of those things that happens.
Well, when the rules are set up in your favor that thou shalt not be touched, I mean, you just got to get rid of the football. You can't hold it too long. I mean, the stuff we're saying about Tua, you got to learn how to fall. You got to learn how to get rid of the football. As a quarterback, where you've got this bubble around you that the rules provide, you got to take advantage of that. You got to work within that. Get out of bounds when you're running the football. Get rid of the football before the walls close in. It's just all part of being a competent quarterback, because it puts your health at risk. And, but for his injuries over the years, maybe the 49ers would have had a Super Bowl trophy by now. So, but here's the bottom line. When you've got Tom Brady retired, when you've got Lamar Jackson subject to the non-exclusive franchise tag and no one interested, when you've got Aaron Rodgers going to New York, the names are moving up the list, and Jimmy Garoppolo is dangerously close to the top of the list, Myles.
Yeah, well, especially because Derek Carr is now signed as well with the New Orleans Saints. So, yeah,
forgot about him.
Right, yeah. He's pretty much the Jimmy Garoppolo right now, in terms of pending free agents, is the top pending free agent at quarterback. And so, yeah, I mean, look, the health issues are one thing, the accuracy issues are another, and the inconsistent play is another. But I mean, at least if he were to go to the Texans, let's say, and he's the bridge quarterback for Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, whoever it happens to be, then I mean, you could get 6-ish games out of him before either he gets injured or you want to replace him with the quarterback that you drafted at the top of the first round. So because you think that player is your player of the future in the first place.
That's the real question, wherever he signs. And the report is the Panthers, Texans, and Raiders are expected to have interest in Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, we know the Texans do, thanks to the person that they tell me is Bobby Slowick. But the risk you take is that you become this year's Mitch Trubisky. And there's always one of those guys every year that when he's signed, he's the starter. He's the guy. Go buy his jersey. You better buy it before the end of April because we're drafting somebody. And each of those three teams, this could be like, and I feel like last year signing Trubisky was just enough by the Steelers to throw off the scent anyone drafting behind them with the 20th overall pick in the draft as to whether or not they really wanted Kenny Pickett. And it worked. Nobody jumped the line in front of them. Everybody kind of thought they're looking at Kenny Pickett. And nobody jumped them. And if they didn't have Trubisky, it's more likely someone's going to jump them. You're a little more desperate going into the draft if you don't have a placeholder quarterback. So he becomes a pawn potentially, whether it's Trubisky last year, whether it's Garoppolo this year. And again, every year it's one of these guys that we think is the starter until they use a first-round pick to draft his replacement. And if I'm Garoppolo, I don't want that. And I don't know what kind of assurance you're really going to get on the way in. No one's going to tell Jimmy Garoppolo we're absolutely positively not going to add a quarterback in round one of the draft. They're just not going to do it. And the contract isn't going to scream out, I don't believe. There's no way in hell they're not going to take a quarterback. Hell, Geno Smith, 3 years, 105, 3 years, 75, more accurately. The Seahawks are still talking about taking a quarterback. Whether we believe it or not, it's not implausible for them to do it. So I think whoever he signs with, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to spend the next 5 or 6 weeks wondering, is this a 5 or 6 week assignment when the season begins?
Yeah, and frankly, I mean, based on his play and based on the injury history, I think that's in line with what he should be expecting. I mean, I don't know that he really should feel like he's earned anything else other than that kind of opportunity. And that's been his role basically the last 2 years in San Francisco anyway. So it's not like it's going to be anything new to him.
And remember what he said after the 2021 season? I wouldn't
Basically,
wish
goodbye.
that on anyone. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And he still came back for more because there was no one else out there who wanted him. That's the thing. Here we are on the brink of free agency. I know last year when he was available via trade, there weren't many options. When he was about to be cut, there was no viable option. He made more money being the backup in San Francisco than he would have made anywhere else. Now, by then, the depth charts are set. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins bring him in as the backup.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you rather, if you're Jimmy Garoppolo, wouldn't you rather go back up an injury-prone starter and you know your role from the get-go? Wouldn't you rather do that than go somewhere where, hey, I'm the starter until they draft my replacement? Now, you may get more money in that spot, but it may be a better spot to go reunite with Mike McDaniel and just bide your time for the inevitable Tua Tagovailoa injury. It's going to be an analysis that I think Jimmy Garoppolo eventually will have to engage.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.